Welcome to the Rich Life Realization Podcast, episode 3. I have a phenomenal guest with me today. She has been coaching me these past couple of weeks, and she is a somatic coach and also a relationship coach. And I knew her when I was subbing and teaching in my teaching and subbing days. And she knows how to light up a room.
Oh.
She was always just this bright spirit, and I am so glad that I've reconnected with her in the coaching world too. Welcome to Cynthia.
Thank you, Rich, and thank you for that very honoring introduction. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely. Cynthia Kruse, Miss Kruse in a previous world, and now do you go by Cynthia when you're coaching?
Yes, not Miss Kruse.
No, probably not. I used to go by Mr. Oz.
Oh, that's right. Yes.
Yeah, because the kids couldn't pronounce Ostendorf very well. So now I'm Rich Life. So Welcome.
Thank you. I'm really grateful to be here, and it's exciting. It's always an adventure to dive into calls or podcasts, and there's always a little bit like, will I say the right thing or do the right thing? And it's always that practice of it literally feels like diving into the adventure and trusting the adventure and then coming out the other side.
Yes, and that's so much what that diving into the unknown is like. In one of our coaching sessions, I kind of described it as almost a feeling of being in a free fall, but actually you're floating.
Yeah.
You're being supported.
Yeah, absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah, the leaning back into something and trusting, trusting the space.
First fall. Well, we have tons to explore today. Let's dive in first to your somatic practice that you've started, and we can also discuss coaching. But I'd like you to start with that and tell us more about what that means to you and how you're developing it.
Yeah. So I would say inherent to coaching practices, there's always a somatic piece, like what's your body doing? And how is that connected to the mind? And maybe we're referencing it in different ways. Maybe somatics is not a word used, but I would say that's just part of the human process of creating change, of creating outcome. And somatics is something that I've recently gotten to really start bringing into the practice, and it excites me because I feel like sometimes in this world, when we're trying to create change, we go the very physical route of I get massages, I get body work, and then there's still the mind piece that doesn't quite change. Or we go totally into the mind and the mindset and the thoughts. But then sometimes there's really big, deep, old body patterns that keep, sabotaging the new thoughts we want to have. So it excites me to get to dance with those two together and really see in my own self and across the screen in front of me really big transformations and shifts in people. And that is what gives me energy as a coach, that kind of long-lasting, deep change that we get to leave with at the end of the session that really makes a difference and is not just a one-day experience and then you go back to all of the old habits that didn't serve.
And it's such a powerful feeling. And I think as coaches, we can start to get a sense for when it happens. We can start to see it in our clients and know. And there's been a couple of moments in my coaching recently where I was like, okay, that's it. They got it. And there was one time where we got into that space of just inner knowing and just hung out there for a while. And it was phenomenal. It was great.
Wow. What did you see? What did you pick up on when you saw that inner knowing taking place?
It was more of a feeling, like a feeling that I felt. It was, they said that, okay, I know what to do. And it was just as simple as that. It really, when it starts to become simple, that's when you know you're on the right path.
Yeah, and that makes me think, because I've been in this position where, someone coaching me might be saying, you'll just know, you'll just feel the truth. And there's some times where that's totally happened and all the stars align. And then other times, I guess that's what excites me about learning, somatic coaching, even for myself, is when I don't feel perfectly aligned and I'm not sure where truth is. I've kind of practiced the home base in my body, like I might refer feeling into my heart, or I know when, I really get something, it feels really warm in my solar plexus, or I feel really grounded in my pelvis. And those are really nice things to, even if I'm confused in the moment by something, or I'm very activated by other, like, this really hurts my feelings, or I remember something that makes me feel really angry in the moment. It's like, oh yeah, okay, body, go back to the place where you know truth and you really feel into it. Like, go back into your pelvis, go back into your solar plexus. And it's almost like building a muscle of remembrance that in the beginning, it's like, oh man, I don't know if this is working, but then you practice and practice and practice. And a month later or 3 months later, it's like, I got this. Like, I know how to anchor into my body and to clue my mind that I know truth and I can be still in it and I can really let something sink in if that's really important to do.
If I can use a metaphor, it almost feels like, and even a sports metaphor at that, it almost feels like it's figuring out and practicing getting back to home base.
Yeah, absolutely.
Where your presence in your current experience. Another thing that came up for me too is the somatic connected to the chakras in any way, because you mentioned the heart and the solar plexus and the pelvic, and those are very much related to chakras. I was curious about that.
Yeah, I absolutely identify with chakras. And I've noticed in clients that it's more important to pay attention to their own knowledge of their body mind map in their body. So if they really are connected to the chakra points, and on that first and that second chakra, and the third and the fourth is perfect. But everyone has their own wisdom, and whatever that means for them is what is the most powerful. And sometimes we haven't had frames or ways to look at how our body maps that out, or visuals or metaphors. So that's where the coach can come in and offer that for someone to really anchor onto. And that's something I really appreciate so much about your coaching, Rich, is how you use metaphor. And one thing I've been practicing that you suggested to me is when I feel my body somatically in kind of like a freeze ice mode, in the past, trying to talk myself out of that, talk myself out of being tired, talk myself out of feeling kind of stuck and low. It doesn't work. But you mentioned to me the metaphor of we're all phases of the water cycle. So when I feel like, I feel kind of frozen and icy, I just imagine the experience of a little bit of sunlight melting that a little. And it opens my body enough that then my kind of more positive thoughts have more power and momentum and move me toward where I want to go.
Wow. That's a powerful, something that you can bring into your life more and more. And I really liked you when you brought up the idea of map, like a body map. And that was something that's been coming up for me kind of recently, is that we have our own maps that we're exploring in ways. And you find that you can take kind of the difficult route to get where you want to go. You might have crags, and you might scrape your knees on them and have to climb over mountains. And you can get there that way. And there's also an easier way too. And a lot of it depends on what's going up in our heads and in our bodies.
Yeah, that I would agree that the map is like, there's so much about the head and the body, and is so individual for each person. And I really came like full face frontal to that. I'd left teaching, and I had been coaching for a couple years. And I thought I had like my map all figured out because I had borrowed, one of my, leaders' visuals of that and how that worked. And then all of a sudden, I really kind of went through some, tough times around health and feeling abundant and feeling safe and feeling successful in this new career. And the map I borrowed from someone just wasn't working for me. And it really took me having to dive more deeply into myself and how that mind-body connection works to find a place of like self-compassion and self-empowerment. Because I think when we borrow other people's ideas of what it has to look like, it's very easy to fall into oh, I'm failing at this, I'm not wanting it enough, this is just my fear getting in the way. And that, for me at least, that doesn't go anywhere, versus a really like marking your own territory in your self-practice, or having someone guide you in that was really for me the key out of a very low and more scary part of my life.
Ooh. And that's the thing, like, as coaches, we can have the inclination to give other people our maps.
Yeah.
And if we do, they're going to wind up in completely the wrong place. Well, and maybe not, maybe it can help them get closer in a lot of ways. But their terrain is different from ours.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, it's also the same too, because we're both humans. We're both similar in powerful and connected even in powerful ways. And so I think that's the value in coaching, is that you have someone who has kind of done that work on their own map, and who can help you with yours, help you find kind of the lay of the land. I always like to think of it as like we're exploring together.
Yeah, I definitely feel that when you're coaching, that you use the tools of timing and space just for the person in front of you to really show who they are, and that you really work with what they've put on the table, and are really curious about what that means to them, why that's important, what might come up when they're talking about that. And I would say this is, as a coach, it's very humbling to realize that you don't have all the answers, and that the person in front of you, your client, is not just a carbon copy of your internal experience. And it's also relieving to not feel like you're carrying the load of this has to be perfect and I have to know all the answers. And I've definitely experienced in sessions when I've had a little bit of like, I know the answers, it doesn't go at all. And the person doesn't feel heard or respected or honored. So that's definitely a practice of mindset and realization and surrender to the process in this kind of work.
It's that curiosity and being open, coming into it with the mind state of being that kind of empty cup, like beginner's mind kind of thing, where we don't have expectations or preconceived judgments, because the client has enough of their own and we have enough of our own too. That's what I think I love about the coaching space is that when it's I don't want to say the word pure, because maybe that's the right word. Maybe you can come up with a different word, or a different word that resonates. But when it's pure like that, and I mean pure without the coach's judgment and without the coach's preconceived notions and stories, we just tell stories about ourselves and our clients. And when we throw out the story, it gives space to start from somewhere new. And that's the power, because then clients can start to narrate their own story in different ways.
Yeah. I would say I struggled for quite a while. But again, trying to use someone else's map of how to do this, how to be a coach, how to lead, how to guide. I struggled with that. I would feel judgment or perception come up, or where I think I should get someone in their journey. And I saw it in my mind, and I would try to push it away. Like if I write the perfect intention before a session, I'll just be perfectly judgeless, or I won't have any nervousness, or I won't be too pushy. And, even now, like, being with you right now on this podcast, I noticed, okay, there's still some nervousness in my solar plexus, that being seen, do I say the right thing? And I can't just make that go away with my mind, although I wish I could. So I'm like, actively practicing I feel the nervousness or the judgment or the way it's supposed to be. And then, okay, I feel that. I don't make it go away. But then I also can feel down into my pelvis where I have that practiced anchor of connection. And I can go back and forth between those two feelings and experiences and sensations, but neither one am I trying to make disappear. And to me, that's why, I've been really on this crusade of learning how to guide myself somatically and guide others, is because I haven't found the secret formula just to make uncomfortable things go away, and really, practice having the space of bothness and trust in the bothness.
That first gift that we get that comes from mind or self is that gift of noticing. And that is something that a lot of people, they're not in tune with, they're not noticing. And when you start that process, it can be kind of scary because you're noticing in your hearts and in your body and those feelings, and then you start to kind of be like, oh my gosh, I didn't even know these were here. Well, now what do I have to do? And
Totally.
And that's why it's so important to be on this journey with other people. And it could be coaches, it could be friends, or really, if you're in tune with yourself, that we can have other people be noticers with us. And that's really what coaching is, I think, is just having another noticer. And that second noticer can share with us when we're not noticing things. But that's what we're looking for, is what's really there, so that we can explore it and not necessarily push it away, like you said.
Yeah.
Because if you try to push it away, it becomes more solid in a way. You're giving it power, you're pushing against it, and then it pushes back.
Yeah.
And when we allow, that can let, like you said, the sun comes out and it warms and melts away.
Yeah. 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 And I would say, I'll put this out here knowing that it's not a broad sweep, but I've noticed a lot of women, including myself, the clue that you're pushing things away and that they're getting bigger and solid is a lot of kind of feeling drained or exhausted or feeling like there's a lack of color in life, or even disconnect from feeling like a sensual, like lovely being. And you just kind of end up feeling a little bit like a workhorse in that mode that everything just has to plod along. And that's not fun. I know I don't enjoy any of those feelings. And it can feel like resistance to be like, oh, I don't like, what am I not feeling? What am I pushing away? What am I pushing so hard against? But what you said, it really is, and often in the space of someone else leading you, that it's okay, is stopping the push, allowing, brings in a lightness, brings in more energy, kind of brings those things that you're craving anyways, even though it feels like, why would this have this positive effect?
Can I add a metaphor to this?
Yeah.
I think might be helpful. Okay. This is one that I'm gonna create a video on in a day or two, and it's about like music. And here, I have the guitar right here. Prop. I do not know how to play the guitar. I'm gonna pretend. But we have this space of kind of who we are, and that space is kind of like silence, and it comes from the silence and it returns to the silence, and we have all of these feelings, and they might be low, they might be high, or really kind of anywhere in between. And there's a trusting that it will go back into silence once they're done vibrating. A lot of people, they are jamming away, right? They're by trying to get the silence or trying to push away the feelings, they're hitting more strings. And silence, there's like the space of music is really in between the notes, and that there's a silence that support the notes and that allow them to come forth and return.
Yeah. I really appreciate your metaphors, and I want to borrow that metaphor.
Yes, you can borrow. You are more than welcome.
Metaphors are really amazing in their ability to describe energetic nuance. And I know it's really easy to get off on energetic nuance, and I really appreciate how you make that very tangible and visual. and experiential.
Mm.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Mm. And as you're exploring with clients, tell me about the experience, because you're kind of present in yourself and in your body. And I think that's what is so powerful in this, is that, and I sense this from you when you're coaching me, is that you're connected, you're sensing yourself, and then that gives me the permission and starts to allow me to really sense in and see where I'm at.
Mm.
What is that experience like for you?
Mm. It's a great question. Yeah, what's that experience like for me? You know, you and I have talked about presence before. And I think it's staying in the present moment with someone. And you know, there's a lot of times during a session where, you know, I might feel a little flicker of doubt in my heart, like, oh, is that right? Or do I know where to lead this next? Or, you know, I notice someone's gone into like, oh, something that's very painful, or they're very internal. And at least for me, if I'm not staying present in my body, I feel like my energy just goes to my head. It's very kind of cloudy. And, you know, I feel kind of washed in the waters of whatever their their experience is. And then I can't stay present to them. And that's at least something in my own personality I've had to come to realize, that I need to create my own internal structure and anchor points in order to stay grounded and present with someone else. Otherwise, yeah, the waters rush and there I go down the river, and then no one's really holding space. And that's my job, you know, and that's what I feel honored to do. And that's what's so healing for me, when you and another coach holds that container for me. And I think whether you're doing that with a family member or a friend, or you're investing in coaching, that's really the gift you're receiving, is someone else being like, I got this, I got you. I don't have all the perfect answers, but I'm present and I'll follow where you're going. And I will hold the space so that you're not alone, and that you're not just washed away by feeling yourself, and that there's a home base to come home to anytime during a session, or especially by the end of the session.
And I've really felt that the last time. One of the things that you really mentioned there that was really powerful, I think, was for people to hear that even coaches, you know, they get up into their heads, and that there's no kind of perfection, and that this is something even during the coaching session that the coaches are working with. And so it takes off a lot of pressure on ourselves when we see that other people are struggling with the same things that we're struggling with.
Mm-hmm.
If we don't see that, we feel more alone.
Mm-hmm.
And as coaches, that's one of our powers, and one of our pieces is to share that vulnerability so that they can see that, oh, this is my coach. They're, up on a pedestal. It's a real person that you're talking with.
Yeah. Yeah, I got to watch that over this past year. I did a year-long training with a woman who coaches on how to be sex, love, and relationship coaches. And there's a huge underpinning of somatic work. And she does very well for herself and is very well known. And yet every call she would come back to hey, I am not perfect. And these are my human experiences. And that's what ingratiated me to her, not so in the very beginning, not so much seeing all her perfect videos where she perfectly lays things out and has the perfect background and everything, but hearing her story of development, where she's been, and just her continual practice of being present in the world and being present in the work she does. It's like, oh, okay. This is not the perfect box. This is not the perfect, how perfect can I be? And it often, I noticed I felt closer to her the more she would talk about the imperfections than the perfections.
It's kind of, it can be scary as coaches to put yourself out there in that way, to share your imperfections. Even just as people, it's scary to share your imperfections.
Yeah.
It's so important now, because if you don't, then and of course there's too much sharing.
Yes.
There's always sharing with a purpose, I think. And when we share with a purpose, and when we share our vulnerabilities, other people see that heck, like, if this person can make it through, if this person can do it, then so can I. And if the coaches are perfect all the time, or have always been perfect, they create that persona of like I I have all the answers, and I've always had. I think it creates a false narrative, and it doesn't allow people to have that permission, and to believe in their own self, and to want to find their own map, because they think that they need the map over here.
Mm-hmm. I'm so curious with how you use metaphor.
Mm-hmm.
How would you, or how do you talk to people about their own map?
It came up in one of my coaching sessions recently, where we were talking about a metaphor of a river, and that the river over here is the source of the river, and that's your true nature. That's the source. That's your own special creative genius, you might call it, or you can put whatever name on it that you'd like. And that water flows down the river, and we tend to see that, oh my gosh, there are tons of sticks and crap over here, and even as the sticks get more and more, like one stick gets caught and then another stick gets caught, and suddenly there's a whole dam. And we can go onto the bank and look out at the sticks in the river. And then we start adding more sticks because we're like, oh my gosh, it's all blocked up and I don't know.
Yeah.
But instead, let's walk the other way towards the source of the river. The water is clear and clean there. And I have my river walking guide so far. I mean, I'm still walking the river. Because you go back every once in a while. You can't really stay in that place all the time, but you can start to do it more and more. And if I were to give somebody else my river walking guide, they'd end up somewhere else. They'd end up in a completely different spot because their river might be turning in a different way than mine.
Yeah. And what is your experience? You know, let's say that you're noticing there's sticks in the river and maybe you're wading through up to the knees of all the sticks. Like, oh, this like sharp on my knees and I don't feel like sure footing and this is the water is cold. And then when you actively shift that, like you step back onto the riverbank or you move to a part of the water that has no sticks, or you get on the raft, what do you get to experience in your world?
Because when you walk up on the bank, that's that first gift of noticing. And then when you walk the other way, it's really you're walking toward a feeling. And that's really hard to explain. It's like that's the job that we're trying to do is to put clothes on the invisible man, you know, because I can use you use the words, you use the metaphors, but they're not the true understanding. The true understanding is seeing for yourself. So the metaphors can help you. They can be that raft. But really it's you're discovering it for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a feeling, and I felt that feeling when you were coaching me. Is this a feeling that you feel like you've sensed before? Is this something that really resonates?
Yeah, I mean, what I was feeling initially was so interesting. As you were talking more and more, I noticed my heart getting warmer and warmer. And then it was so cool because at one point you were speaking of this, and then you put your hand right here. I was like, yes, that's exactly what I'm experiencing, is that, you know, walking toward this feeling, at least in my body map, it activated in me the warmth of the heart and the release of tension in the shoulders. And I would say when I'm, you know, on my own, if I'm, you know, kind of stepping out on the riverbank and walking toward a feeling, there's a sense of very physiological empowerment. Like as I say that out loud, I feel like if we talk about third chakra being empowerment, I feel this like, oh, muscle, I got it, in a warm way, in a way that's not clenching, in a way that's not, pulling me forward or forcing. It's this power, empowerment, strength, and then a warmth in like the chest and the heart. And that's really fun to notice and to keep practicing, even when, I'm in the river and the sticks are hurting, like maybe I'm trying to put clothes on the invisible man, but at least I know there's a sensational awareness of what that can feel like as I'm walking toward maybe the unknown, but walking toward a different path.
Because the water really is, and just like the silence is in the music metaphor, the water is there throughout the entire river. Even when there's sticks, the water is there. So even when we're like not even on the bank, but we're in it. We're in the river, we're in the sticks, we're like being thrashed around in the rapids, and you almost feel like you can't breathe. That water is still there. That water from source.
Is that what
feeling?
Yeah, is that what you call like creative genius? Is that the feeling and experience of creative genius in our lives?
Oh yeah, 100%. Yeah. That's when it shows up, and we're tuned away with the sticks, but it's always there. And so even when we're in that place of being in the sticks, kind of trusting that's there for us, and knowing because we've known it before. The home base that you talked about, the home base feeling.
Yeah. Let's say that we all have that innate wisdom. Like I would imagine anyone listening to your podcast has the innate wisdom. I know the water is always flowing. I know it. But what do you notice coming up for people in terms of when you're guiding them and showing that? What comes up for them in terms of, no, I don't believe it, or what resistance comes up, or what blocks, or fear?
I think that if there, sometimes it could be like a confusion, like that they're shaken up, or that they go up into their heads, like us coaches do sometimes, and then they bring themselves back down. I think that's what really kind of happens to bring them out of it or block them from it. But they're not really blocked from it. And if they can start to see that, then that is that's the second gift. The first is noticing, and the second gift is seeing that we always have that. Like in our bodies, we always have this this sense of healing, this inner electricity that is beating our hearts, and if we have some of those other things, that really that's just a layer over the top of that.
Yeah. You know, what struck me about what you said was, you know, what like prevents people from realizing the waters over there is the kind of a sense of confusion. And I was feeling into the massive like storm cloud that confusion can feel like. And you know, I think a lot of times in our culture and the coaching industry, it's kind of like, well, you just get through confusion by getting clear. You get clarity. Just be clear. And there's so many like hooks in the confusion cloud. And I even feel like if we go back to this, everyone has their own map, their own superpower. You know, I might say to a client like, oh, well, you find clarity through confusion by just tuning into your heart, and your heart will tell you the truth, that the flow is always there. But that might only, that's like some people. Other people find their clarity through kind of like focusing on the energy of their third eye, or other people find truth and hear that the river is always there, you know, just by speaking things out loud. Or other people might be in such a like confusion, and I don't believe I'm being held, I don't believe in the river, and then they go for a walk for 30 minutes and slowly they get back into truth and their innate wisdom. And I think that's really powerful. It can feel unpowerful if you haven't found your connection point yet. I just want to encourage that it's there. And, you know, sometimes someone can guide you in finding it, but the fun part of it is it doesn't fit in a box of what anyone else's somatic awareness of clarity and trust is. You're entirely your own. And that's kind of an adventure in itself to find out how your particular roadmap, your particular map, your particular experience connects to that. Because I believe we all have that, like you said. And like sometimes there's really big storm clouds that make it feel really hard.
Yeah, and people, there's real pain that comes from that space of confusion, and that space of hurt. And I was, when you were speaking that, I was thinking about the session where you had me imagine kind of this, I think you really, I came up with it, but you helped me to. And that's what I love about your coaching too, is because you're guiding me towards coming up with my own space, my own metaphors, my own senses in my body. And so I imagine this suit of armor, because I've always been interested in medieval, of course, the chainmail and
Yeah.
and so it's finding that within yourself, and that's powerful. That's an inner exploration. That's the coaching treasure that we find together.
Yeah. Is your chainmail, do you do it all, is it all by hand?
Oh yeah. I open and close each link. Yeah.
Even when you just held it up to the screen, like in a past time when we met, I was like, it's so perfect. And something that just hit me was, like, how long does it take you to do a piece like that big?
Probably about 30 minutes to an hour, depending on the weave.
And that's a significant amount of time. And I was like geeking out about, this is how this all works. We're like link by link, or 30 minutes by 30 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
We're putting together this chainmail, this piece. And I don't know about you, but if I was just starting doing that, I would probably get pretty frustrated with myself or not believe that I could do the whole. I've done that with knitting blankets. Like I go, and then like, oh, I'm never going to finish this. But every time we get to complete the loop, it kind of cues our whole body and our mind and our chemistry to go, this is possible. Like I can move through things that feel tough or make my hand ache if I don't have the muscles yet. But there is completion. And then life will bring up like the next chainmail piece or the next blanket to weave. But every time, it's not like you're starting new again. Your body remembers, I did this. I built these skills. I built these muscles. I built this sensational awareness, this mindset. And I have a completion. And I believe that is what ends up building a deep self-confidence in oneself.
There's a couple of things that I'd like to speak to in there. And the first one is that it's so good to hear that, especially people who are starting out in this exploration, is that it can be challenging at the beginning, and kind of you're working on creating those loops. And for me, it brought up the like completing a circuit, like an electricity circuit, is a lot what like a realization is. And that you're putting another link in, and like I open and then I close the link. Once I've threaded it through. And the fun thing about this is that there's a sense of completion with each loop. And it never really ends. There's never a time where you say, oh yes, I am fully realized. Oh.
Yes.
But we find that like one link at a time, one noticing at a time, one feeling at a time, one realization at a time.
Yeah. How do you in sessions when guiding people, how do you either guide them in that mindset that it's one link at a time, or help them experience that? Do you feel like it's just kind of a gut knowing that you're showing people how to do?
Well, I think it's a lot of trying to help them close their own links, and showing them how I close my link, and providing like metaphors of, oh, this is what closes a link, and this is a little bit about what it's like, and then they get it, and they have that realization, that feeling. That's what it's really like. And you do that one at a time, and I can show them, my links, but like I said, it doesn't really help. I can show them really how I got to my links, but I can't show them my specific links, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Yeah. And then it's a big experiment. You really see what sticks. There's some people that really resonate with something, like you said. They might be connected with their third eye or their heart space. And I think that's the first invitation, their first connection, but that they're really connected everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And we're connected in one area of our life, maybe, and that's the one area that goes smoothly, and then disconnected in so many other areas over here. And so we kind of build it into our lives.
Yeah.
And expand, like you said, you help them see that first connection, and then that opens up the way they then can explore, okay, how am I connecting? Let's try it over here. Okay, that's not working.
Yeah. Yeah, and that whole, ultimately the goal is to be connected to our whole selves.
Mm.
And I would say, again, that's one of those, like, well, days and weeks and months, no one can be perfectly connected to themselves all the time, unless perhaps they're a monk in a temple on a mountain and only eating 2 dates a day. And but I hear, like, so I have the privilege and the honor of getting to coach both women and then men in a particular environment with my partner. And I noticed with women, if they come with the idea, like, I feel like I've lost part of myself, or I don't feel like my true self, or I'm trying to finally be the best version of myself, or finally put myself out there in the world the way I want to. Internally, the somatic experience of that is because there isn't a more full-bodied connection. And so they're literally feeling, I don't have all my pieces here. I don't have all the pieces of the pie. And I'm trying to find how I can bring all those pieces into my life. And then I noticed, with the men I get to be on calls with my partner, they're kind of coming because they found they weren't disconnected, because their marriage started not being connected. And so they kind of, like, something's not working out here. And part of the coaching process is for them to connect to more parts of themselves. And it's funny to me that we speak the language of saying exactly what's going on in ourselves. We've lost something. There's pieces missing. I've missed something. And it really is an indication of somatically what our map's looking like, and can we pull some of those pieces back in that we never grew or lost along the way, or maybe it's a brand new piece that we weren't supposed to connect to until this exact moment in time.
That timeliness is really interesting piece, literally. Because we can look back at our lives and see where we found some of the pieces, and we can see the connections, right? But we can't look forward, and we can't see them over here. And so we don't trust that they're there, that we'll find them.
Yeah. I know that one.
Yes. And then you're like frantically searching for the pieces. Oh, was it under the couch? But yeah, you'll find each area of the map. Like you can look back and you can see, and you'll see, looking backward in 3 years, how the pieces fell together.
Yeah, and I witnessing your work and like how you post on Facebook, and I know you're holding a class in creative genius.
Mm-hmm.
It really strikes me that you have a really active way to help people feel into their pieces that they've lost or they're trying to gain through this idea of what is your creative genius. And the thing that stuck to me was you had put the guitar on the wall as a visual reminder, and I could imagine doing that, not because my goal is to learn to play guitar, but it's symbolizing musicalness, being in the moment, playing with the moment. That's a piece I would like to have back in my life from being a kid. And I don't know the exact answer of how to get there. I can maybe remember in my body what that felt like, but it's a symbol in the future of what's to come. It doesn't have the perfect, this is how it's going to happen, but it's out there and it's something to move toward, and it's a metaphoric river bringing you to that peace that you're so seeking.
Yeah. You can take as long as you want to get there. And it's also a second away.
Why is that? Why is it only a second away?
It's only a second away. Because it's always been there. It was there since we were born. Even it was from which we were born. And it will be there when we no longer have this